Hello. Hopefully you are enjoying your snow day and hopefully you are studying for your test for our first day back. But I wanted to go through the review with you step by step in case you wanted the help on it. I apologize, the camera's far away and I'm just making the best I can of it. So right here, these were 4 different problems and you were supposed to identify them if they were a parabola, circle, ellipse, or hyperbola. This, if it has x squared and y squared, then it will not be a parabola. It's got a plus, so that's going to be a circle or an ellipse. So if the coefficients are different, it's an ellipse. So this is the same thing as saying 1 over 25 x squared, and that would be 1 over 44 y squared. So since the coefficients are different, that's an ellipse. This one, you've got to take that 4y over because the x and the y need to be on the same side of the equal sign. So that would be 196x squared plus 4y squared equals 9. So once again, they're both squared. It's a plus, but the coefficients are different. So this also is an ellipse. Now, if it had been 4x squared plus 4y squared equals 9, the coefficients would have been the same and it would have been a circle. This one, both squared, but it's got a minus. So anytime these are opposite signs, so this is a positive x squared and a negative y squared because of the minus, then that's going to be a hyperbola. Okay, and then this only has one squared term. It doesn't matter where it's at, but if you only see one squared term, that's a parabola. Okay, and the flow chart is back up on Google Classroom if you need to see that. This one, very simple, says what are the coordinates of the center of the following ellipse? So this also, use what you're given to give you clues to other things. If it tells you this is an ellipse, then that looks really similar to this. Okay, but your center always comes from the parentheses, nowhere else. So this is going to be the opposite because when it's in parentheses, it lies. So this, our center, is going to be a positive 3 and a negative 5. And that's all there is to that one. This one asks which conic section does the equation below represent and what is its center? Well, it has a minus. So this is positive and this is negative. So that's going to make it a hyperbola. And the center is going to be negative 5, 3. Just the opposite of what's in the parentheses. Number 4, you're going to write an equation in the form, and this is just the standard form for writing a parabola. So you want the y or the x by itself, whichever one's not squared. So I'm going to show the work for this. Okay, so you're going to have y, and we'll leave a little space because I got to take this 13 over there. And I'm going to put my x squared plus 10x plus something, because this has to be a completing the square. You have to get that x value. And then this 13 goes to the other side, so technically we're subtracting 13 here and subtracting 13 here to make it go over. Okay, so now you have to complete the square. So you take 10 divided by 2, and that's always squared, and it's always the term that doesn't have the squared with it. So that gives you 5 squared, and that's what goes down here with your x inside the parentheses. So it's going to be x plus 5 squared, and you know that when you get there, but you have to actually say 5 squared is 25, and that's what goes here. And if we added 25 to this side, we also have to add 25 to this side. Okay, so that is going to end up giving me 12. So when I do plus 25 here, I'm going to have y plus 12 equals x plus 5 squared. And I'm going to take this 12, subtract 12 from both sides to get the y by itself. So your final answer in the form that it asked for is this. Okay. So y equals x plus 5 squared minus 12. It didn't ask you for it on this, but if it had asked you for the center, it would be -5, -12 would be the vertex, not the center, the vertex of the parabola. And since this is a y equals a positive x squared, it would open up. Okay. Number 5 said, what is the equation in standard form of this circle? So remember, for a circle, to find the center, you have to have the x and the y separated. And if you need to complete the square to get a parenthesis, you do that. So here we've got x squared, and there's no other x's to go with it. So that part of my center will be 0. And we're going to do y squared minus 20y. And since I've got these two y's together, I have to complete the square. So plus something equals, in this 19, I'm going to take over here. So I'm actually subtracting 19 from both sides. So that's -19. So I do -20 divided by 2 squared. That's going to give me -10 squared. So that goes down. So x squared plus y minus 10 squared. So we now know our center. It's going to be 0, 10. But we have to complete the square up here. So -10 squared equals 100. That goes here. And if we added that on this side, we have to add it on the other side. So -19 plus 100 equals 81. So all it asks you for on that was to write it in standard form. Now, if you had to graph it, your center would be 0, 10, and your radius would be 9. But it didn't ask for that. On number 6, it also asks you to complete, it didn't say complete the square. It said, what is the standard form of this equation of a circle? And I know I did this on the board, but some of you may need to see it again. So you get your x's together. So 4x squared minus 8x. And I have no more x's. Okay, so I'm going to put my y's together now. 4y squared plus 20y. I've got my y's together. And this is a constant that's by itself. So we're going to take it over here and subtract 20. We're actually subtracting 20 from both sides. So that equals -20. Now we have to complete the square twice, once for the x, once for the y. And you can only complete the square if your coefficient of your squared term is 1. So it isn't, so we have to factor out a 4. So 4x squared divided by 4 is x squared. -8x divided by 4 is -2x. And I got to do plus something to complete the square. So over here, on the other side, I also have to do 4 times whatever I did 4 times over here. And same thing with my y's. I'm factoring out a 4 again. 4y squared divided by 4 is y squared. 20y divided by 4 is 5y plus something. And over here, plus 4 times that something. Okay. This, you take your linear term, -2 divided by 2 squared. That gives me -1 squared. And I know that -1 is what goes in parentheses down here with my x. So I keep the 4. I do x minus 1 squared. Okay, and -1 squared equals 1. -1 times -1 is +1. That goes here and here. Okay, now I do the same thing with my y. I take this 5. 5 divided by 2 squared is 2.5 squared. So that's what goes down here. I got my 4y plus 2.5 squared. And 2.5 squared equals 6.25. That goes here. I add something, and it goes here. Okay. So now, when I do -20 times 4 times plus 4 times 1 plus 4 times 6.25, that gives me 9. Okay, so that is the standard form of the equation of the circle. It didn't ask for it, but if it had, you would know your center is at positive 1, negative 2.5, and a radius of 3. Okay, now let's look at number 7. And it says find the center and the radius of the circle with this equation. So this one's really easy. It's just the opposite of whatever's inside parentheses. So the x value for my center is going to be a negative 4, and the y value is going to be a negative 16. And the radius is always the square root of this number. So the square root of 36, is 6. So radius equals 6. So pretty easy, I hope. All right, number 8 rather, says to find the center and the radius of the circle with this equation. So we have to complete the square again. So we got x squared minus 6x plus something, and y squared minus 10y plus something equals 2. And since I added those two things to the left, I have to add them to the right. Now here I did not have to factor out anything, so it's just simply completing the square. So I got negative 6 over 2 squared is negative 3 squared. So that's going to be x minus 3 squared. That just goes down to the parentheses. Negative 3 squared is 9. Negative 3 times negative 3. So I add 9 over here. This negative 10 over 2 squared is negative 5 squared. That goes down here. So y minus 5 squared. And negative 5 squared equals 25. Negative 5 times negative 5. So that's 25, and that's 25. Okay, so when I do 2 plus 9 plus 25, that's going to give me 36. Okay, so it asks for, on this one, the center and the radius. So the center is 3, 5. And the radius is the square root of 36. So radius equals 6. Okay, I'm going to stop this one right now and let you have a break.